Welcome, everyone, to another session on Microsoft Project Technologies and Project Program and Portfolio Best Practices from Advisicon. I'm Tim Runcie today, and I will be your guided tour. I'm actually pretty excited to dig into this topic as we are getting lots of questions about what will Project do? What about Microsoft's general idea, the direction that they're going with their tools and technology. And it's important that we are able to understand a little bit of how that works, as well as the common misconceptions that happen to be out there. As you guys know, and if you haven't seen our other webinars and videos, either on our YouTube channel or our Learning Management portal, which actually has PDUs, I really encourage you to check those out. And the links are right on the screen, but have fun, learn, and feel free to reach out anytime with questions. In fact, what's interesting about this is as we look across the entire ecosystem of the different technologies, especially supporting each other from the Microsoft platform, a lot of these common misconceptions, a lot of these questions have percolated. So today I've got the top 7 things that we hear quite commonly. My goal is to help you orient and understand not just what the tool sets can do in the project space, but also the direction that Microsoft's going. So for example, you might be a little early for one tool, but maybe a little late for another. And we'll talk about the blend or the hybrid between those. So as we dig into what I call those 7 common misconceptions, it's important for us to be able to kind of think through this. And by the way, for those of you that are joining and have been to some of the Microsoft Project User Group sessions, I recommend you also check out some of those video recordings as well. There's a lot of detailed information where we've actually invited the Microsoft engineering team to come and talk through that. So first off, let me hit the top 7 that come up all the time. Number 1, project. Now remember, the word project is pretty broad now, considering we're talking about Planner, To Do, Microsoft Project, the legacy desktop tool, Project Online, Project for the Web. We have this Power App Accelerator, Project Operations, whether we're dealing with Microsoft Teams and lists. All of these things are designed to be interdependent as well as support each other. But again, when we say project, what does that really mean? So there's a lot of different tool sets that fits within. Now, project is not an agile tool. I hear that quite commonly where people are saying, well, I've used it for waterfall, I used it construction. We're going to talk about that as well as some of the direction that Microsoft's moving to. Project for the Web, here the acronym P4W, we're still going to call that out, even though Microsoft says the word project. When they say project, they're referring to some of their newer techs, not some of their older techs or project operations. And that can be a little confusing for people to dig into. So one of the things we know is that certainly it's a newer technology, but I hear all the time, can't customize it. We're going to dispel that myth. We'll show you what's available. Again, it's not as customizable as some of the other legacy tools, but it's important to know what you can or can't do. Another big fear runs all the time is that the project desktop is going to go away. Not true. We'll talk more about that. But in general, the idea of using the desktop tool along with whether you're managing tasks, deliverables, or resources, you actually have a whole host of different approaches that you can go through in terms of ensuring that you've got good resource management, good visibility, as well as some of the ease of use and some of the automated report packs that happen to be available. Now, we'll talk about kind of the weaving of both resourcing and reporting because in many cases they have some overlap there. But one of the areas that we're running into quite commonly is that this new element of the Power Platform, whether it's Project Online, working in Office 365, using Power Apps, Project for the Web, Power BI, Power Automate. My goodness, all these word power. How do we use Project for the Web with a grow-up enterprise story? And that's really important. In fact, I'll spend most of my time digging into the last 2 here because this is something that we're hearing quite commonly is that, hey, there's no grow-up story. Now, there actually is a grow-up story. The question is, are you ready for that grow-up story, or do you need to kind of crawl, then walk, then run? And of course, finally, and I hear this all the time, that the free Accelerator that Microsoft puts out on GitHub to download quickly and efficiently for the Project for the Web is easy to use. Well, this is easy if you're starting and you only intend to use the free version. But the minute you start getting into customization, we cross into some different thresholds. So we'll talk about that, how you can work with it. I'll kind of show these along and give you some live demos so you have an understanding of what to be prepared for, how to make the most of the tech stack that you do have. All right, misconception number one, project is not an agile tool. Probably for the last 10 plus years, I've been talking about this, but the idea is that project is not a waterfall tool. Project is not a agile tool. It is a database. It's a relational database. And if you think about other tools that are out there, Jira or other elements, they also are relational databases. They just have built more views, or they've kind of organized the fields ahead of time to be leaning into a little bit more agile. So let me jump right into this, and I'll kind of work our way through. In fact, let me bring up the legacy version of Project. Here, a lot of people say, I've used this for 20 years and has nothing around Agile. Well, if you look at my screen that I'm sharing right now, the idea is that, you can have a waterfall schedule, certainly can have that blended inside of with an Agile or not with Agile, or completely Agile, completely waterfall. But the idea is it's a database. These records, rows, and columns are designed to be worked together. So if you want to add customer need or priority, if you want to add story points or the state, even if you want to kind of manually start figuring out what looks like in terms of where a task is, you'll notice up here that there's a lot of areas that we can play around with in this view, including if I click on my view tab here, I can certainly group by burn down, where I can kind of collapse the overall, hey, these are the non-sprint related or the non-agile things, but hey, where are the features? How many story points are we actually consuming? And again, this is native project, so we've got this kind of classic view. But where a lot of people get excited about, in fact, let me just go over here and turn off my grouping. And by the way, I just built a quick custom group by the different fields, is when you go over to your view tab, you can actually with two things. One is if you're in Project Desktop and you're using what's called the click to run, basically Project Desktop 2016 click to run, you will have these agile features. In fact, let me bring up something called the task board. I'll kind of collapse my timeline view there, but you can see here I've got this board view where I can add buckets. I can move things around. Again, I could double click and modify these and manage them as I need to, but you can add new columns. So if I want to come in here and say super important, and I'm trying to manage, so if I can spell it, there we go, and I want to drag and drop these fields together. In fact, you'll find a lot of videos and training and other elements out here, but you've got this task board view, very much a Kanban-esque planner, drag, drop, post-it notes on a board. Then again, we can flip over into something called a sprint planning board, where by default, you can look at the entire length of your project, figure out how long your sprints are. Remember, a sprint is a time box. Just gives you a period of time that says, hey, these are the activities that we're going to manage. And so just like we do in Planner, we can kind of drag and drop these. And again, it's doing behind the scenes is simply updating the database information for what sprint something is scheduled for. Now, what I like about this, again, I'll switch out of this in just a moment, talk about some of the other tool sets, is that if you go over to a Gantt view, in fact, let me just collapse my timeline here, is that I could be in an Agile view, but I can also come back, and a lot of people aren't aware that there are tables, basically the rows and columns, or what we call the grid view, that says if you want to scroll in here, you can go over and take a look at your task boards, right? So here it is. Here's the board status. You can actually figure out what the work is, what sprint it happens to fall into, if you want to add deadlines, etc. And all of these things really get into the idea of all of this data happens to be in a view where you can type in and add the columns that you want. I could ask for, hey, what booking type it is or what the board status is, and there it is. So I've got these fields that you can massage your tables with, including if you want to come back and go, well, what about that sprint thing, Tim? I really enjoyed kind of the look and feel of that. So whether it's task boards or I want to hop over to sprint planning, you'll notice that these are just columns. And again, from an Agile database perspective, you can manage your views, including go over into the Sprint tab, and you could go in and say, hey, I want to plan out my sprint planning sheet here, go into more of a granular view. You can actually go to a current sprint or a sprint board, and you can manage these. You can actually set these up. So in the desktop, you've got these localized options that are very helpful. And for most project managers who've used Project, easy to work with. Now, let me pivot out of what I call legacy or the classic view of Project. In fact, let's just go ahead and put everything back here into our standard Gantt chart, and I'll put an Agile table on this. And let's just kind of take a look at our overall project world for just a moment. So when we go to project, you'll notice that you have an option to do something called a roadmap, which today we won't talk about, but it's really cool. You can pull all kinds of things from Project for the Web, Project Online. You can marry them together from Azure DevOps, but you've got some flexibility to create a roadmap picture. But inherently, if I want to either go to Project Online, which is in the bottom here, or if I wanted to drill into the new version of Project, the intent by the Microsoft engineering team is to help you guys get quickly up to speed saying, look, we get it. People like the spreadsheet look and feel, but they also like the board view where I can kind of massage and manipulate things in some sort of a web-based view. Well, all the fields, whether you're using classic Project and you promote them to Project Online, will be there. You can build views for this, but this is more that drag and drop interface where I can move them between basically what we call our buckets or the board view. If I want to also switch off classically to my timeline view, and again, build the relationships or the dependencies, I can actually link these together, add, modify my durations, etc. And there's some really powerful things that are coming in this view, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But the idea is that yep, I still can have an agile view of the information even using the new version of Project. So absolutely, misconception kind of shattered is that this is here. And what's beautiful about this is if you want to build custom views or forms, or if you want to pop this into a mobile app, it's a database, right? We treat the database exactly as that, and you can make it certainly an agile management tool. All right, let's take a peek at misconception number 2. Project for the Web can't be customized. Well, let's go back here since we were playing around with this and say, well, what can you really do? Now, remember, this is where Microsoft's investment is going in the future. And I will tell you, it is still in that kind of that toddling phase of growth, in that there are more and more things that are coming out almost like every month. There's a new release of features and capabilities. And the intent is to eventually catch up and replace at some point, if possible, Project Desktop, which has a 30-year runtime and is still going strong. So absolutely, in terms of the build here, is that you can customize these. In fact, you notice here I've got this KPI column, which we hear all the time. So when I go in and I actually want to look at adding, well, Microsoft says you've got a bunch of fields you can work with. In fact, if you want to, you can click on the drop-down arrow. You can hide or edit some of what you see here directly. And if you really truly want to get into kind of massaging or managing, you'll notice at the far right-hand end here, you can add a column. Notice here you can add labels as well as a new field. And the idea from the new field is you've got date, numbers, yes, no, and text fields, or you could certainly build a choice. And in building a choice, you could come in here and say, this might be, is it critical or not critical, right? And then I can let somebody choose yes, no, or question mark, question mark, question mark. Now, I think I've done some training around this where if people want to use basically the old Windows keys, there's a lot of little shortcuts you can add in terms of visibility, including using the emojis or the icons. And this is where you'll see the red, yellow, green indicators or icons. Just make sure you don't put text in there. The idea is if you want to pick, you can use these. And again, you can see press the Windows plus the period or the semicolon key, it'll drop it in here. And if you want to go into different views or symbols, or if you want to play around with, you've got a lot of things to choose from. So all of this is fun and fun to work with. But the idea is that if you want to add your own choices, make it in here. Not sure. Spell it right there. Click on create. I've got a column. Now, when we drag and drop and move these around, again, you can come in here and say, hey, look, if I want to see this, let me just make sure it goes in the right place. Click on the drop-down arrow, and there's my choices. So you've got this ability to do a lot of quick and easy customization. And yes, there are limited. No, you don't get 256 columns automatically to start configuring. But the idea is from a project manager who simply wants to get in, manage and group the information, work in a board view and a timeline view, this is really helpful. Now, continuing with this theme here is where people say, well, what about an enterprise level custom field? Let's say I want to customize this or change it or format it. Well, there are some limitations here, but the idea is that there's a Power App layer that will sit above this. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later on, is that the ability to continue to add issues, risks, a RAID log. I want to throw not just attachments directly at one of my open tasks, is that, yep, I got a nice checklist here. Yep, I can come in and add dependencies and add attachments. I can certainly see here if I've got a quick view, if I want to view any changes or modifications and put notes and comments. But the idea is that I want this to be the same across all projects. That's where we kind of step back and say, let the scheduling engine as it's designed be the kernel for the time phase data, but then we'll have layers around that. And that will go into a little bit more about the overall strategy of where project operations, dynamic CRM actually fits into place, and other tool sets that you'll be able to work with. All right, let's talk about misconception number 3. Boy, I tell you, this one scared a lot of people who love using the desktop tool. In December of this last year, I had the Microsoft engineering team come out and I made them say, is the desktop going away? Tell everybody. And the answer is no. There's not an intent to turn off the desktop. Now, if you're thinking about licensing, when you go out, sometimes the licensing model gets a little confusing, like what is actually what? Well, project plan desktop here. This is either plan 3 or plan 5, right? And the idea of plan 3 is that, hey, I'm going to use project desktop. And if I want, I can save and promote this information into project online, right? You get this enterprise level view that says, hey, I don't have to keep these all saved locally. Now, the idea of plan 3 and plan 5, what's the difference? Really has to do with you're doing resource management or portfolio management. And Microsoft is going to tune the licensing also that we'll see with the project plan, basically what we call plan 1 or project for the web. We're going to see other licensing models kind of shift and change. But as you know, Microsoft has a fiscal year, and July 1st, everything starts over. So in general, if you buy a plan 5 because you're doing portfolio management in the enterprise tool, or plan 3 if you're only just using the desktop tool and you want to work with project online, that's fine. But remember, you have this roll down story, which means that if you buy a plan 3, you also get a plan 1. Plan 1 is project for the web. And so the idea is that many project managers might have very complex projects, but they want to work with these. So the desktop itself is really designed to be a very powerful tool and to help people work. And of course, if you're going to continue to need an enterprise approach that says, well, listen, I've been using all of my local desktops, and now what I want to do is put it into an enterprise environment. You'll take your plan licensing, basically your plan 3 or plan 5, and you'll push that into the online environment, project online. So push comes to shove, even though SharePoint might deprecate some of its workflows and things might start moving into what we call the modern versus the classic view of SharePoint and how things work together. In general, what we know is that the desktop, even if that's all you use, is going to be around for a very, very long time. And that's important. Because as you think about the scalability of the interactive, whether it's an IT or a project management office, or you're doing construction or engineering or healthcare, is that you want to make sure that you're infusing your project lifecycle, your processes, and leveraging the tools that go together. That means planner in conjunction with teams, in conjunction with project or project for the web or project operations. All of them are designed to work together. But remember, your systems and your processes will trump certainly using a technology. So a lot of people will jump in and try and get to a tool. I just recommend, hey, before you worry about losing the desktop, make sure you have a good process, especially as you start thinking through the enterprise approach to things. Okay, let's continue. Misconception number 4. Managing resources is too hard. Well, I will tell you that going up one level, meaning from simple tasks to managing milestones to jumping in and managing resources, in some cases requires a little bit of additional knowledge. we're not talking about working at just a row or a column level. We're talking about assignments, meaning the ability for people to come in and progress and make updates. So if I take the project desktop tool, let me just kind of do a quick grow up story here directly. So still in my plan here, let's go ahead and we'll just do a Gantt with a timeline. So if I'm working directly in, let's see, we're in an agile view here, perfect. So if I'm working with this schedule and go, all right, I want to save and publish this into an online environment. Before you do that, the idea is that you could be working with local resources. I think a lot of you have probably built or added your own little mini resource pool that you come in here. So if I want to go and say, hey, I want to add resources, or if you want to shift over to a resource sheet view, you'll see that you have an option of, hey, we can drop resources in here. You can also get into, at least at the desktop level, using what we call the team planner view. And the idea of that is that very quickly and easily, I can drag assignments and drop them off on different resources. I can say, oh, this hasn't been assigned here, and I can move those around. So again, it's about learning about the different types of views. And certainly as you're working with those, every time you hit publish, or if you move this into an enterprise environment, you have a lot more hooks to managing work and work assignments. Now again, this is the desktop level. Let me just say, if we publish this into the online story, so again, we'll just deal with the classic for just a moment. If I go back here, there's an entire resource pool that we normally connect our project desktop to, and you can use that. Now, a lot of you, this is a maybe old hat where you've had a chance to work with your resource and resource center, and you can come in and say, let's build views and we'll select all the IT resources, or you can come in and say, group it by manager and select the teams or the workers that you have to be looking for. But the idea is that whether I'm grouping, sorting, filtering, or finding our resources, you can add or select people as you need to, and you can instantly jump into what we call capacity planning. Now, the idea here is that the resources assigned, inherently, when I go into a capacity plan, I've got all of their real data sitting here, and then I've got visibility across what's actually happening. So whether I'm doing it by resource or utilization, kind of looking at my demand or capacity, you've got some great little reports. And of course, these legends over here allow you to toggle that off and on. But a lot of people are excited about using some of the newer versions of the project technology that are out there. So let me switch over into Project for the Web, and we'll talk about resourcing for just a moment here. The idea is that if I want to build a team with a project, is that as I come in here, you notice I've got this group section. So we're using something very similar to Planner or to a Teams channel or to a Teams teams, is that we're creating a security group and we're inviting people into this. Now, if they don't have a license for Project for the Web, then obviously they're not going to be able to edit and modify that. Or if you go get one, then they have the ability to edit and modify. What's really exciting, and Microsoft has talked about this, we've been kind of on the drawing boards, and Microsoft will be allowing in the future people who don't have a Plan 1 license or a Project for the Web license to still come in here and see their assignments, to see the work that they've been added to and progress the details around that. Now, why is that important? Well, what happens is while this isn't a full time sheeting mechanism, but without having to pay for an additional license, I can actually come in here and Michael can actually progress his work, his remaining work, without having a license. Now, that means that you can allow or share that information with others. And one of the things that's exciting about that is that while I might be in a Teams environment where maybe you've got a planner board and then you're using a little Power BI to run some analytics on the reports or what's getting done, or you're modifying that. But then you go and say, listen, if I want to add or see all my assignments, how do I personally find that? On the left-hand side here in Microsoft Teams, you're going to see a little feature called Task by Planner and Project. And we call this Task by Planner, to do. But what's happened is that Project for the Web is going to feed all of the assignments to something called the Task Hub. You've probably heard me talk about this for the last couple of years, is the idea is that a task can originate from inside a Word document, a PowerPoint, could be in Planner, could be in Microsoft Project for the Web, but we want to basically bring those work and those work activities directly here into one place where you can actually see where that work is coming from. So this feature hasn't been enabled quite yet, but I'm telling you, just wait a couple more weeks, if not a month, you're going to start seeing some of these things start to appear. And that allows you to say, as work is being propagated from different systems, the end user actually can find that visibility. So managing resources is getting better in terms of looking at that. But what's even better than just having access to the task and looking at assignments is the ability to have what we call our reporting and our dashboards. Got to sign into my Power BI here. And let's go and let's just grab a standard report pack. Now again, Advisicon, we play around with reports all the time. In fact, it's wonderful having a BI and analytics team because you can get into some really complicated and then a lot of real simple types of reports. But the idea is that you have a great set of reports that is hooked to both Project Online and Project for the Web. So you can actually be looking at both your budget by stage. You can look at milestones. You can look at issues and risks. And when it comes to resource availability, you can actually start seeing that work activity. What's even better about that is that these Power BI reports, not only can you embed these in your team channel, but if you happen to be using the Accelerator, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more here, is that you can begin adding what are those what are the lessons learned that we have, or what are the decisions that we might be making available. But the overall idea is that when I come in here, I actually can have visibility to what is going on with work, assignments, or tasks. So the Power BI, whether you embed that in a team tab or you use it on a SharePoint page, which there's all kinds of ways to share this information, this report pack for looking at your resources, assignments, looking at the overview of information, as well as resource details and what they're working on. All of this you can download free from Microsoft. So they got a great set of report packs. And again, you can continue working those whether you're on the legacy side of Project Online, Project Desktop, kind of shared together, or you're using the modern, basically we'll call Project for the Web and even the Accelerator. So from a resourcing perspective, you'll find that there's a lot more tools available. For those of you that are already deep into the project operations, or what we call resource bookings, you're going to start seeing some new things emerge in the Power App platform. In fact, we're going to be seeing things that says, hey, look, there's an entire resource booking engine that's actually being held separately that you can pull into. I'm going to have to probably do an entire session just around that because it's exciting to say, look, we use this in Project Ops. We might be using this with our Accelerator, but we're seeing this kind of a Power App that I can pull out and plug in and use in different places. So stay tuned for more on that. You'll see quite a bit more information in terms of the evolution of resource management on the Microsoft stack. All right, we're talking about reporting, and I just needed to check that box because resource task, assignment, quickly getting in and managing or finding where that information is will always surface to good reporting. As we talk about using the Power BI report packs, both for Project Online has its own report pack, and of course, Project for the Web and the Accelerator have some native report packs to work with. All of these are designed to help you quickly surface across the details that are coming out of those systems. Now, let me take that one step further. We have some organizations who are using Project Online still. In fact, they love it. They're doing portfolio modeling. They're doing cost modeling, things that come very naturally and natively to the legacy world. But they have some project managers, like let's say in the accounting departments or the finance teams or the marketing teams that love their planner. And they like the grow up story of just a little bit more of having Project for the Web. But yet what we want to do is begin marrying what's going on from, hey, our legacy ERP accounting system, or perhaps we're even modeling a little bit more of what's happening across multiple project systems, including Azure DevOps, or digging into perhaps Jira or other legacy tools that maybe you've got an IT task tracking system. The great thing about Power BI is it does not care where your data is coming from, right? You can say, I love this dashboard, but I'm going to rip out this top section because I want to put a checklist that filters the same way for what is our velocity or what is our burn down coming out of DevOps or perhaps out of Jira. Maybe I am going to look at story points. And while we might be having some of that in project, I'm really managing it externally. These are all things that you're going to see that the Power BI, which is part of the Power Platform, emerge very strongly. Now, we know Power BI is pretty sexy. It's a fun tool. In fact, if I had another career, I probably would just go into report building because I call it the frosting of cake building, right? Some of us have to grind through the schedules and estimates and then manage the work, and the report builders make it all look good. But in general, Power BI looks at data and it says, I can bridge these across the board. And while you're working on the Microsoft 365 platform, we talk about the dataverse, the ability to share and work with system information differently. So again, like I said, we've got customers that love bridging multiple systems and driving it into dashboards. It's accessible, it's visible and available. And if you want to bring resource assignments that are coming out of Project for the Web using the same resource name here, if I'm actually working in my grid view and I go, there's all my people, here's the work, you can marry that with your Project Online reporting if you truly want to do that. So there isn't a limitation, but again, this is where you have that flexibility that Microsoft says, if you want to bridge these, you can. We're not having to do it natively because they're focusing on building the tool. But if you know enough about Power BI or certainly the ability to merge and mend your data, doing what we call OData, then very easy to make that happen. Now, the grow-up story is what we're really beginning to wrestle with, and this is one of the areas that we have lots of questions around this. So misconception number 6 is there is no grow-up story with the Microsoft project tools. So from desktop being promoted into Project Online, that is a grow-up story. So just working independently with Project Desktop, saying, hey, I just work here natively, and then I save it to my SharePoint drive, or I localize that and I save it on my hard drive or OneDrive. But the idea is that publishing and sharing this information is part of that enterprise grow-up story. When we flip over to the newer scheduling tool called Project for the Web, as we get out here, what's the grow-up story for this? Well, Microsoft is not trying to build a tool that does everything. What they're doing is creating modular technology that says, look, you can quickly and simply, efficiently have people manage their schedules, slap a report pack on top of it, all well and good. But there's a grow-up story for you if you want to actually step back and jump into and look at project registrations, or if you want to have an intake process. But the idea is that you'll notice here that I'm in a Power App. So what Microsoft's done is they've given you a free version of a report pack as well as the Power App itself to say, look, I can drill into all of the projects or programs, but when I want to start building enterprise information, this is where you're actually going to come in and you're going to start looking at this information. So for example, if I drill into one of these, like let me just double click on it, you'll notice lots of fields here: resources, tasks, issues, risks. I have stakeholders, I have lessons learned. If you want to add audit, this is where you can go hog wild and begin to put enterprise level functionality that all projects will certainly work with. Now, there are some limitations. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But the grow-up story is that until you either want to use the Project Online, which is pretty much built, easy to configure, but it isn't, it's tied more to the classic technology. And if you're moving down the Power Automate, the Power Apps, and the Power Platform, and you like Project for the Web, then your grow-up story very easily starts moving into this Power Platform that we'll work with. And what's important about that is that, remember, what Microsoft has done is they've given you multiple stair steps to grow the technology that you're working with. The upper echelon is something called Project Operations. Very powerful tool. Resource booking, advanced connection. It really works well when you think about folding in CRM, saying we start a proposal, we build a mini project, we resource load it, and then it comes in, we begin scheduling and managing using Project for the Web directly, using the resource bookings. Again, we'll have more webinars on Project Ops specifically because I think there's so much there to show. But it also requires more care and feeding. Project Enterprise or Project Online still exist, very much easy to manage and care for, easier. But people who started with a little simple task management, say in Microsoft Lists, or they love Excel and they've got a to-do, or maybe they're using Planner and they're working their way up, may not want to jump all the way into enterprise project management. This is where the Accelerator or Project for the Web is a great bridge. It allows you kind of an intermediate state until either Microsoft continues to build it out with more feature and functionality. So thinking through that, it's important to be able to mock and work your way through what is the right platform, what will deliver the highest value. And I will tell you, Project Online still is delivering great value for a lot of customers. Once it's built, it's got a lot more features and capabilities than Project for the Web, but Project for the Web is really easy. And so this leads us to our final misconception, and I'm going to talk about this real briefly in terms of the top level. But what's really important here is the drill down story, because while you hear the term low code, no code, hey, you're a citizen developer, these are very, I won't say dangerous, but they're concepts you have to be careful with, because what they're requiring says, hey, if you want to move into doing what we call low code, no code, be careful. It's a very slippery slope into high code or writing and development work. So the idea is that the Project Accelerator is a power app with low code, no code to customize is a true statement. It really is. You can turn it on, you can plug it in, you can deploy it and start using it today. However, if you jump into the power app space, you'll notice here that I've got, in this accelerator, I've got lots of different fields. Well, remember that if you are going to start configuring or managing this, you have 3 dimensions to this. Number one, if I come over here to the reports section, we're talking about building reports, right? If I want to mine and look at a portfolio, or if I want to build a really cool status report and drop it in here, all of this is visible and available, but you need to know how to use Power BI. So if you need to know how to mine and model your data, understand where the data is coming from, suddenly we weren't just building charts and graphs in Excel where we'd highlight some rows and columns and press the function 11 key and poof, there's a chart or a graph. We're really starting to take advantage of the real powerful tool, but part of the Power Platform, Power BI. If you want to continue to modify or customize this, you'll have to understand that says, look, when I come in here, I need to learn more about how a Power App will actually work. And so you're going to find that the commonality, the things that work all the time with your projects or the views that you're working with, is that the learning curve of learning a Power App, which Project for the Web, the Accelerator, Dynamics, and other tools, is it's all the same learning curve, but it's brand new. So a lot of people step in and go, hey, it should be pretty easy, right? And then they go, wait a minute, I have to be a technical administrator to understand I've got to come in here, I got to build cloud flows, I may need to choose lookup tables and choice fields that I have to build from. I may need to be able to go in and look at all the particular custom controls, or if I need to build more of a structure, I have to work through some of these in terms of objects and understand how I would set up securities and permissions. And so instead of being a project manager extraordinaire or a program manager or portfolio manager, suddenly we're saying there's a technical component that says you've got to know more about how the Power Platform is structured and set up. That's one of the fun things, is that I have a team that actually comes and helps us do that or can teach you how to do that. But be prepared that to step across from the easy to use Project for the Web, quickly drag, drop, have all of it there. Once you move to that enterprise environment, you're going to cross this new barrier into the Power Platform. And whether you're building simple time off requests, in fact, here's our time off request, which I get to review and approve requests, et cetera, as a Power App, whether it's a Canvas app, or if you're pivoting over into this Project Accelerator, which is a model-driven Power App, there's a big learning curve. And then when you decide to create workflows and automation, well, Flow is a great tool. Most of the common structure for routing and authentication and sending notifications, easy to do, but you could slip also very deeply into writing complex code. And this is where you will need a developer. So suddenly we've gone from, hey, wait a minute, I actually can drill into my projects, view the information here. Perhaps I want to see my task, and the end users can come in here and go, not a problem. I want to refresh my view and see the overall schedule and drag and drop and move these around in a timeline. But the administration, the setup and care and feeding has taken a bigger hit. Welcome to the new world. This is the new platform of the Microsoft 365 experience. And as you cross into Power Apps and you cross into Power Automate and Power BI, they're designed to work together. And so the end user experience might be pretty easy, but there's a little bit more editing and modification that you'll be working with as you start managing this information. So you need to be prepared for that. So as we get started again, back to that infinite power, yes, we wish it would work. But the idea is that there's a trade-off, right? Project desktop, project legacy, project online, certainly easier to manage, but maybe a little harder to interconnect with other things and doesn't necessarily provide you the same simplistic view that project for the web did. Again, these are all part of the project tool sets that are available, and there's some trade-offs. So if you ever get to a place where you're kind of wrestling, I'm not sure which one is the right tool set, which way to go, give us a call. We'll point you in the right direction and turn you loose. But be prepared that when you begin digging deeper, if you downloaded that Project Accelerator, right, it's a primer. If you design and decide to customize more of these things, then you'll need to be prepared to understand a little bit more about that Power Platform. So in summary today, we talked about project tools. Oh my gosh, there's so many tools that say task management, work management. They have agile elements. You can have them in project for the web or legacy project. But the idea is that this local, easy to use customization certainly is something you could tackle and do intermittently. But if you want to start having enterprise level fields, enterprise level functionality, we'll have to look at a different level of knowledge. Again, Project Desktop is here to stay, not going away. In fact, if you want to port it over to Azure or Project Online, we're talking with customers who go, I still want to use my old project server on-premise kind of stuff. Well, these things you may want to have to spin up and move off your server if you don't have a data server. But Project for the Web, Project Ops are all designed to be cloud-based, mobile-friendly, easy to work with. Managing resources, again, pick the tool, find the right tool it is hard if you haven't had any training or coaching, but you're going to find that your views and reports will really help simplify that. And remember, all of those tasks are going to start showing up from Project for the Web, To Do, Planner in your team's channel. Like the whole idea is I have quick visibility across the board for that. You got negative reports, you have positive reports, you have things that look at deficits, under and over allocation. We have an entire series of report packs for both legacy project tools and Project for the Web tools. And as you begin embracing the Power App, or if you're still using another reporting tool, whether it's Tableau, etc., you're going to find that there's plenty of things to work with. But again, we're beginning to make that, stuck your toes in the water working with the Power Platform. Again, there is an absolute grow-up story. In fact, if you get to a place where you want to mix and match between legacy and modern project, you can use Power BI to bridge some of those technologies together. But remember that when you begin to start moving to that enterprise level, that Power Apps or the Power Platform has a learning curve. And I recommend embracing it, or when you finally embrace it and you find people who understand how that will work, you'll be doing the same things on your Dynamics platform. You'll be seeing other Power Apps. The structure is very much the same, but it's all new, and so a lot of people are wrestling with that. So again, thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful. I try and make sure people understand some of the moving parts and what to wrestle with. Again, I encourage you to check out our free training and videos that we have that are out there. If you want PDUs, go to our learning management portal. Same thing that we put on YouTube. We actually have it in LMS system. And so again, all made free to people. We'll continue to put these out there. And again, I hope this helps you evolve what you're doing. I'm Tim Runcie, and I hope this was helpful. Take care now.